She stood there, exuding an aura of immense power as if she were a masterpiece carved by God. Chapter 35, Lilith. Serena jumped startled. Dropping the clothes she was folding when the door to her, an Ajax's room burst open. It was an hour after the meeting and everyone was in a rush to prepare for the sudden leave. While Ajax had gone to prepare everything for the departure, she had gone to their room and had packed a few clothes for both herself and Ajax. She whirled around and watched a very pissed, off Ajax walk into the room and slam the door shut. What happened? She could feel his anger bubbling inside of him as he marched toward her in long strides. He was in front of her in no time. One of his hands wrapped around her arm, pulling her to his chest and the other curled lightly around her neck, forcing her to look up into his glowing eyes. Next time when I say you will stay somewhere safe, you won't disagree with me, he growled lowly, his eyes shining silver dangerously. Am I understood? If she was anyone normal, she would have cowered back from fear. But her wolf pushed forward, and her eyes turned cobalt blue in defiance, though her body was pulsing with desire from how he was acting. Possessive and dominating. You can't dictate to me what to do, she fired back. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I cowed and stayed back. I wanted answers to why my life was that shitty. His hand tight and around her neck and he leaned down and closer, so they were practically nose to nose. Then I would have gone and brought the fucking answers for you when I was fucking sure you were safe and protected. He hissed through gritted teeth. Didn't you hear what King Ulrich said? She asked exasperated lie. You don't utter that fucker's name in front of me. He snarled in her face. The vein in his neck popped out at how angry and jealous he was. Serena sighed and closed her a second, trying to stay calm. Her eyes were softer when she opened them and were emerald green again. Raising her hand, she gently cupped his face, watching him relaxing immediately under her touch. He closed his eyes and leaned into her touch like a kitten, making her smirk briefly at how much power she had over him. This is not fair, he grunted before opening his eyes, which were much softer but still silver. You melt me with one touch, causing me to forget what I was fighting for. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm, she said softly, looking up into his eyes. I have finally gotten my life under control. Everything is finally falling into place. She then looked away and blushed as she spoke again. I have finally gotten my mate back and feel happy. In finally falling in love. She spoke the last sentence so low that he would have missed it if he was not an alpha. He could swear his heart skipped a few beats before beginning to race wildly. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Did she mean she was falling in love with him? Serena, gently turning her face with his fingers to look into her eyes. His now brown eyes searched hers for any sign of the feeling he was yearning for her to feel. I can't deny it. I told you this morning that I like you a lot. She chuckled lightly, her eyes shining brightly. You're making me fall for you. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Fucking hell, mumbled Ajax before pulling her flesh to his body. He wrapped his arms tightly around her waist and buried his face into her neck. But I've fallen for you so fucking hard already, my little Luna, he grumbled, lightly kissing her mark. I love you so much, and that is why even the thought of something happening for you frightens me to death. Serena pushed his face away a bit and stared into his eyes with sincere worry. That is why I'm afraid to. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I want whoever that had been blocking you and me to be together gone. I want the threat to our happiness gone. I don't want to lose you again. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Her hands unconsciously fisted his shirt in her hands as she talked, and her eyes became more frantic the more she spoke. Sure. Ajax shushed her and pulled her head to his chest while rubbing circles on her back. He could feel how her heart was beating so fast due to her fears. Everything will be fine, my love. I will destroy this threat for you. Just calm down. I want to help destroy it if I can, she said quietly, her voice muffled a bit by his shirt. I can't stay here when I know you have gone to war. I will die of worry. His heart roared with love and tears berimmed his eyes as he tightened his hold on her. If he could, he would dance from happiness. Hearing her concern for him and confessing her affection for him was a dream that had come true suddenly, and right then, he was feeling like the luckiest man alive. God, Serena, you're going to be the death of me. He grunted and cupped her face with both hands, pulling her face away. You're not going to get rid of me that easily. My love, you are stuck with me for so long. Then his lips descended on hers. Their lips latched together hungrily and she didn't hesitate to kiss him back. Her hands went around his neck and she stood on her tiptoes to have better access. He grunted before putting his large hands on the back of her thighs and holding her up. In the next second, he had her pinned to the wall with her legs wrapped around his waist as they sucked each other's faces off. She moaned as his tongue plunged into her mouth and dominated hers easily. His hands began to rub her thighs up to her ass and back, making her buck her hips against his, unlearning a guttural grunt from him. She pulled away when she felt her lungs were bursting from the need to breathe, and he used the moment to kiss his way down to her neck. She threw her head back and moaned loudly at the heavenly feeling of his lips on his mark. Her moans were the most beautiful voice he had heard in his life and had made him hard as steel. His tongue darted out and he licked his mark, making her MWN squirm under him. We should stop, she panted and weakly pushed against his chest. As much as I want us to continue, I don't think we have time. Sucking his mark one more time, he pulled away and pressed his forehead to hers. They both were panting hard, both hating every inch of space that was between them. God knows how much I want to take you right here and right now. Goddess, Serena, you were surely sent to torture me. He grunted as if in pain. But I want our time to be special. I want to take my time with you and ravish you all night. Not in the rush of going to war. His words caused her to almost come right there and then. She was once again feeling so hot and bothered and wanted to cry when he gently put her down on her feet. Her knees had turned to jelly, and knowing that he quickly wrapped an arm around her waist, supporting her weight and smirking at her disheveled appearance. Her lips were swollen from their heated make-out session and her face was flushed and a bit sweaty. His wolf purred in contentment and desire. He didn't know how long he could control himself from jumping her bones and claiming her fully. You seem awfully in thought. Serena's eyes snapped open and her head whipped to the side. Her eyes widened a bit when she saw Alric standing beside her, watching her with amusement twinkling in his eyes. And you were smiling like a creep. Were you daydreaming about your mate? He trushed to her face and her eyes wide and even more. What? No, of course not. She squeaked, trying to defend herself feebly. To my agent extraordinaire, my Lenobe, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Drawled Alric and smirked mischievously while pointing to the corner of his mouth. Then why do you have drool there? Horrified, her hand shot up to her mouth and touched the corner of it, but found nothing. Alric began to laugh and she groaned and dropped her head. You were in fact daydreaming, he managed to say between his laughter. You should have seen your face. She wasn't daydreaming. She was just remembering what had happened earlier that day. After their make-out session, SCRNEI and back what they needed before going to the main square, where so many people were gathered. So many painful goodbyes and tears later. A group consisting of 50 of Ajax's best warriors and high-rank wolves were running out of the territory where the army of vampires was waiting for them. After so much arguing with Damien and Grayson, none of them had agreed to stay. Nick and James also refused to stay back in the pack. Throughout had left everything in the hands of his Delta, Clara, and Mavis. He also had left some of his good warriors to protect his pack while he was gone. Sebastian had reassured them that the enemy's focus was somewhere else and the likelihood of her attacking the packs was very low. When they had reached the army of vampires, they had set off to the road without wasting any time. The vampires were riding on top of powerful and fast steeds, and the strong warriors of the pack were all running in their wolf form, led by the giant black wolf of their alpha. The wolves were running in a circle around the horse that was carrying their Luna. Both Serena and her wolf had become offended when Ajax bluntly told her that she was unable to run with them for long distances. She had stubbornly refused, mostly because of her wolf's pride. But after running only for an hour and feeling that she was slowing down everyone, she finally accepted to ride a spare horse that the vampires had with them. So even hours later, her body was still aching from pushing herself to her limits for an hour. Hours after the sun had set, they finally came to a stop between the woods that were halfway through away to the council grounds. After a conversation between Nalric and Ajax, they decided to rest there for a few hours before continuing their way so that they could reach the council before dawn. Ajax and a few of his men had gathered, talking about war strategies. He had prepared a makeshift warm bed for Serena and had ordered her to rest as much as she could and had put 2 warriors to guard her because he needed Toby and Harry at their meeting. As much as his caring side was fluttering her heart, she couldn't stand his boss innocent sides. She was restless after the long ride. So using her guard's distraction with food, she tiptoed away and began wandering around in the woods to get rid of the stiffness in her legs. The woods were a very beautiful place even at night. She wished to come there in daylight to see its beauty more. Her legs had carried her to a stream that was running down gurgling on its stony bed, adding a beautiful melody to the song of the night. There she stood and finally let her mind process everything that had happened since she had gone through heat up to the conversation she had with Ajax and their make-out session right before their journey, leading her to the embarrassing moment caused by the king of vampires. "You are so cute, Serena." Ulrich shook his head, still chuckling. "Don't laugh at me, my king." She put a hand on her hip and glared at him. "Do you need me to bring up how you are acting around a certain blonde beauty that happens to be one of your guards?" Ulrich immediately sobered up and his smile faded. He cleared his throat awkwardly and looked everywhere but in Serena's direction. She could swear his pale skin was dusted with pink bitten, and pulled her lips inside of her mouth to stifle her chuckle. "I don't know what you are talking about," he said nonchalantly and clasped his hands behind his back. "Oh, of course, you don't know." She smirked devilishly. "But seeing you acting like a possessive caveman around her makes my anger lesser for you." All through their ride and the short break times they had during it, she had seen how he would do his best to be beside the woman all the time, would follow her around like a puppy, and glare harshly at men from his army who would laugh or even talk with her. Ulrich frowned before turning back to her confused, certainly thinking about the reason that she was angry with him. He stared at her for a second before realizing what she meant. "Oh, I see," he said awkwardly, rubbing the back of his neck and easily. "It's about my proposal letter, yes," spat Serena, annoyed. "That very stupid letter. What were you thinking? Ulrich, please try to understand me." Looking at her desperately. "I was worried for you. Serena, you are my dear friend. I owe you my life. So imagine how I felt when I heard about the only cure for your disease from James. Plus, I can't deny that in the past I liked you quite a lot. Maybe even more than a friend." Despite being annoyed, she cowled and controlled the smirk that crawled onto her face, stretching her lips to one side. "Liked me in the past." "Hush," he teased, and Ulrich groaned and looked away. "So you don't like me anymore because of this new woman?" "I'm wounded, my king." He sighed again and Serena frowned. He looked at her and smiled softly. "Her name is Freya." Serena gasped and clasped her hands together, looking at Ulrich with glinting, excited eyes. "So you really like her?" she asked hastily, truly happy for her friend. "Like, really like her?" Ulrich let out a deep low laugh and shook his head at her enthusiasm. "I think it's more than a simple liking." His face became a bit serious and a slight frown creased his brow. His hand went up and dropped his chest right on top of his heart. Serena's heart melted and she wanted to at him so bad, but controlled her tongue, wanting him to continue talking about his love. "Whatever in around her, I feel this odd feeling in my heart." He continued as if now that he had started, he couldn't stop himself from talking. "I feel alive after so many years. She's perfect in every aspect. You know, so soft, kind, and caring, and at the same time, so feisty, brave, and strong. He paused, his fists clenched and his frown deepened. Even the thought of her not being around me or with another man set my soul on fire. He partially growled, looking into the space. I want her around all the time. I want her attention on me all the time. I want to see her beautiful smile every second of the day, just to feel the flutter in my heart. Oh, Alric. Serena cooed happily, not able to control herself anymore. I'm so happy for you, my dear friend. I'm so happy you have her in your life. Ulrich's face became guilty a bit and he glanced at her. I only met her some months ago and found out about my feelings recently, he said awkwardly. I'm not a doshabit. When James told me about your cure, I was sure about my feelings for Freya and panicked. I wanted to help you, though I wasn't sure about my feelings. Please don't think bad about me. I understand. Serena smiled softly. And I probably would have done the same to help you. I'm just happy that God has guided us to the right path. Ulrich nodded and looked at her worriedly. Are you fully healed now? He asked worriedly. I wanted to come to your aid right away. But James told us not to. He said to give you and offer Ajax some time. I'm fine. Thank you, she answered with a nod. My heart is fully healed after Ajax marked me, and everything is finally good between us. Then I'm happy that I didn't interfere, said Ulrich. Giving you to time seemed to work. You seem so close. Serena frowned and looked away from Ulrich toward the stream again. I don't think it was only the passing of time that helped us, she responded. It seems something or someone was the main reason for everything bad that has happened in my life. The reason why Ajax and I were separated 3 years ago. That is why I have come. To seek answers. Ulrich put a hand on her shoulder, effectively gaining her attention. Everything will be fine, Serena, he said softly. I'm positive that we will soon defeat this witch that has caused us so much grief. Serena opened her mouth to ask him more about what he knew, but her eyes widened when she heard a thundering roar that shook the ground and caused the birds to flow into the night sky in fright. Ajax's panicked voice immediately flowed into her mind, making her flinch. She was surely in trouble when he would find her. Serena, where are you? Are you around? Can you hear me? Are you all right? Talk to me, baby, please. He said all of that in one go, so panicked and stressed, making her feel so bad about sneaking out without telling him. She could feel how worried he was through their bond. She closed her eyes and focused her thoughts on Ajax. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I'm fine, she replied quickly. I just came for a walk and down near the stream. Don't worry. King Ulrich is with me. I'm safe. Stay exactly where you are. I'm following your scent. She shivered after hearing his growl in her mind. He was truly pissed and she was going to hear an earful from him. Oh, Ulrich chuckled, looking at her a amused lie. I think someone is in trouble. I think it's better you leave, she said awkwardly, feeling Ajax's or getting closer and closer. Ajax is a bit possessive these days, and it's better he doesn't see you here with me. No way I miss this. This turned out to be so fun, mumbled Ulrich as he watched something behind her before his smirk grew. Serena cringed internally at hearing Ajax and slowly turned around. Immediately, she was pulled into a tight hug and her mate's scent filled her nostrils. She melted into his embrace and her tight muscles relaxed instantly. She could hear his heart beating frantically under her ear and felt more guilty. He pressed her to his body and buried his face in her neck, inhaling her divine calming scent and finally allowing himself to relax. Since their departure from the pack, he was feeling extremely alarmed. His wolf was constantly on edge and he had not left his mate's side for a second. He was feeling as if any second a hand would reach out to take Serena away from him. He wanted to take her to his meeting too, but seeing her exhausted face, he had decided to let her sleep as much as she could and instead put 2 of his warriors to guard her. 2 guards that were now supporting broken noses. He had felt that extreme numbing fear only a few times in his life, all of them recently, and all of them related to Serena. But the fear he felt the moment he didn't see her in her makeshift bed was the most extreme. He had thought about the worst in area. It was a miracle that his wolf didn't let it loose and go on a rampage. He was sure something had happened to her or she was kidnapped. So, broken noses were a very easy punishment for the two neglecting guards. He had felt scared out of his wits, angry, panicked, and helpless all at the same time, and was already following her scent at full speed. So when he heard her angelic voice through their mind link, the relief had knocked the breath out of his lungs momentarily, making him halt in his steps. He was so grateful that she had accepted the blood bond so they could mind link. He tightened his hold around her body, trying to assure himself that she was right there, safe in his arms. His wolf slowly calmed down as he inhaled more of her delicious scent. "I'm so sorry," she mumbled in his chest, rubbing his sides gently. "I'm so sorry. I didn't want to scare you this much. I just needed to walk a bit. I don't want to talk right now. I'm so angry. Love," he growled in her ear, feeling her shiver in his arms. "You are so much in trouble, Serena." Thankfully the Vampire King was wise enough to leave them when Ajax had arrived. Now that he was sane enough, his blood was boiling in anger. And all of his anger was directed his beautiful mate this time for how reckless she was. She tried to hide her face more into his chest, but he gently pushed her away, enough to be able to stare down into her captivating eyes. She gulped at seeing the anger swirling in his eyes and began biting down on her bottom lip. "I'm terribly sorry," she mumbled before she pouted adorably, effectively melting his heart. Without a doubt, he was like clay in her hands, and she could shape him any way she wanted with the simplest things she would do. "Fuck it, Serena," he grunted and ran a hand through his hair. "You mess with my mind so fucking bad. I can't even stay mad at you. What the hell are you doing to me?" She opened her mouth to say something but was immediately silenced by his lips, which came crashing down on hers. His kiss was unlike the others they had shared. It was rough and dominating. It was as if he was punishing her. And oh, was it turning her on? She clutched onto his shirt and tried to pull him closer, but he pulled away right away, making her whine shamelessly at the loss of contact. He then grabbed her hand and began to drag her after himself toward the camp. That was mean. She whined like a petulant child, feeling pissed at him for making her horny and leaving her needing more. He glanced away and glared hard at her, trying so hard to not let her pouty, swollen lips soften him up again. "You are so lucky that I'm not bending you over my lap and spanking you, sweetheart." He growled and cursed himself for saying that as suggestive images filled his mind. She gasped. "You won't dare." "Oh, watch me, babe. All you need to do is to continue to act like a child and piss me off even more." It seemed she was opposed to the thought, but images filled her mind too, and strong waves of desire suddenly knocked into him. He glanced sideways and found her once again biting on her lip. "Shit," he mumbled under his breath, and the next second, she was pushed up against a tree and his lips once again locked with hers. He bit on her bottom lip, making her gasp and giving him the opportunity to thrust his tongue into hers. They continued devouring each other's mouths for God knows how long before Ajax pulled away once again. "Fuck. I don't think I can control myself anymore." He grunted against her neck before lightly kissing her mark and pulling away. Pride roared in his veins at the sight of a panting, disheveled Serena. "I hate this freaking war." She groaned, annoyed, and tried to tame her hair a bit. Second by second, their desire for each other and mating fully was increasing, and it was becoming hard for both of them to resist jumping on each other's bones. Ajax sobered up at the mention of war, and his heart sank at the thought of the looming threat over his mate's head. He gently tucked a wild strand of hair behind her ear and stared dead into her eyes. "Serena," gaining her attention, "please, I'm begging you, don't go out of my sight without informing me of it. Don't repeat what you did tonight until this shit is over and dealt with. I will lose my nuts and someone can get hurt severely during my rampage. You promised me, for fuck's sake." Serena gulped as guilt rushed into her system again. She could feel how concerned and anxious he was for her safety since they had left their pack. She would have lost her mind too, if he would suddenly disappear. "Okay, "I'm so sorry." She gave him a soft smile, trying to lighten the mood a bit. "It won't happen again." "Good," he mumbled before leaning down and kissing her forehead. He then stepped back and stretched his hand for her to take. His eyes were once again soft. "Shall we go back to the camp? I want you to rest as much as possible. We will soon continue our way again." She smiled warmly at him before placing her hand in his waiting one. He smiled down at her too before raising their joint hands and kissing the back of her hand. He then turned and led the way back to the camp. All the while they were walking back, Serena was looking at his back mesmerized. His muscles were flexing under his shirt, making her heart flutter for him. The fact that he cared so much for her was playing with her heartstring. How could she resist falling for a man who had made her the sole reason for his life? How could she resist falling for a man who loved her more than anything in his life, handled her with the utmost care, and was protecting her with his life? The answer was very simple and easy. She couldn't resist. It was at the crack of dawn when they finally reached the council grounds, and Serena was weary to her bone although she had slept through the journey. After the stunt she had pulled, Ajax refused to let her ride the horse and insisted she sit on his back. It felt as if he was afraid of being away from her. Being surrounded by his scent and relaxing tingles had caused her to unconsciously lay on his back and bury her hands and face in his warm fur. And finally, after fighting sleep for some time, she surrendered to sleep. Though she had rested almost all night, she was still so tired, and it was annoying her that everyone around her looked like they were great and ready to go to war any second. Was she really that weak? Even Freya and other female warriors between vampires and werewolves looked seemingly unbothered by the long journey. Freya looked so graceful and beautiful as she stood tall beside Alric and was talking lowly with him, and a few others, while Serena was sure she looked like a mess after sleeping all night at Ajax's back. "What are that pout and cute frown for again?" Ajax's amused voice caressed her ear as he whispered in her ear. "We are certainly going to double the time of my training when we are back." She huffed annoyed. "I hate that I'm the only one who looks like a wreck when actually I'm the only one who has done nothing." She glared when every werewolf around her began to chuckle, either visibly or subtly. Ajax looked down at her lovingly before running his hand through the mass of her silky hair and easily taming it. He then kissed the top of her head and put a hand on the small of her back, pushing her toward the giant doors in front of them. "You are a beautiful wreck. Don't worry," he whispered as he urged her to walk toward the double doors of the council castle. The council castle was a big structure made of stone. It was vast, full of rooms and libraries. It was where people from different races would come to solve their problems and plead their cases to the elders of the council. The council consisted of 8 people, 2 from each race that still existed in Aetheria: werewolves, vampires, and witches, magicians. Dragons were still living in the far north, but it had been centuries since anyone had heard from them. They had completely isolated themselves and weren't quite friendly with other races. Serena looked up and saw a man standing on top of the stairs that lead to the front doors. His eyes were fixed on them as they walked up the stairs. Alric was the first to reach the porch, flanked by Dorian and Sebastian. The old man bowed for Alric. "Hail to King Alric," he said, and then bowed for Ajax. "Serena, to my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nolan, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." And to Damien as they stood beside Alric and his group. "Welcome, Alpha Ajax." His eyes then went to Serena and they glinted a bit. "And you must be famous, Luna Serena." He smiled warmly, making the wrinkles on his face increase. "Welcome to the council grounds. In Frederick, the council's clerk." Serena smiled in return, not knowing how her fame had preceded her. "Good morning," she said awkwardly. "Good morning, Frederick," greeted Alric, all serious in his king mode. "Is there any news? When can we meet the elders? Are you not tired?" asked Frederick politely. "I can prepare accommodation for you and let you rest for a few hours if you like. We prefer to meet the elders sooner," spoke Ajax with a gruff voice. "Please follow me then," answered Frederick and gestured for Alric, who was closer to the door, to walk through it. His respect for the king of the vampires was completely evident. Actually, the elders are gathered and in a meeting. Lady Lilith arrived an hour ago and demanded an immediate meeting. Sebastian perked at hearing him. Lilith is here, he squealed. Is she all right? Yes, she seemed quite fine to me, nodded Frederick while walking beside them. Cold and strong as always. She must have so much news, Seb spoke, seemingly talking with himself before looking at Frederick again. What about Alpha King? Is he here too? Alas, not. But I think Lady Lilith had some news about him too, for she is accompanied by Alpha King's Gamma. Serena tried her best to follow their conversation, but she was so much in awe at the beauty of the castle. The floors were made from glinting marble. Everything was placed so neatly and in order. Beautiful paintings, sculptures, vases full of flowers, and beautiful handicrafts had been placed in the right order to catch the spectators' attention to the fullest. They walked for some minutes in the lavish corridors of the castle, until they reached big wooden doors that were guarded by guards in shiny armor. Frederick nodded for the guards. They bowed and quickly opened the doors for them. Serena's mouth almost touched the ground when she saw the large room behind the doors. It was a large circular room. The roof was so high, made like a dome, and was covered with ancient paintings. There were seating arrangements for visitors on both sides of the room, similar to the spectator stands in stadiums, and right in front of the front doors. On top of a platform, royal seats had been placed and on each had sat a person. All of them looked old and at the same time young, and power was rolling off of them, even from a distance. They all looked elegant and graceful. That was how Serena saw the elders of Aetheria for the first time, who were responsible for keeping peace between the Staria. Her eyes then fell a bit down and landed on a tall woman in a black cloak who was standing right in front of the elders' platform. Serena gulped at the sight of the woman, who slowly turned to face the newcomers. For some unknown reason, all the werewolves in the room became a bit tense when they saw her and felt respect toward the woman. Even Ajax. She was so exquisitely beautiful. It was as if she had been sculpted by God with the utmost care and precision. She was wearing a red dress under her cloak that was making her pale-skinned stand out even more. Her head was held high and great power was rolling off of her in waves and knocking into them. Her sharp grey eyes scrutinized all of the new faces like she was reading their minds effortlessly until they landed on Serena and stayed there. A smile stretched onto her ruby, red lips, and Serena could easily read the feeling behind it. A smile of relief. Lilith. Sebastian yelled in happiness and relief and rushed toward the woman. You don't know how relieved I am to see you in one piece. It's good to see you too, my friend. Lilith's melodic voice filled the room, firm and strong. Her eyes scanned the newcomers and she nodded for Alric briefly. It's so good to see you all. Her eyes once again turned and landed on Serena, and the storm in her eyes swirled as if in excitement. Especially you, my dear Serena. I'm so happy to finally see you in person. Chapter 36, Answers. Especially you, my dear Serena. I'm so happy to finally meet you in person. Ajax gently put a hand on Serena's stomach and pushed her behind him. Are you the woman who can give me and my mate the answers we need? He asked with narrowed eyes. Feeling uneasy. Yes, I can give you the answers you seek, nodded Lilith. She then turned to the elders. I told you what was necessary. Let's discuss things further after I explain things to these important people. We can't do anything more than get prepared and wait. One of the elders, certainly a fairy from how angelic and delicate she looked, stood up. Her delicate glass, like wings, moved behind her, showing that in fact a fairy. Let's speak about everything over breakfast. Our guests should be tired. Her soft and melodic voice filled the room. She looked down at the newcomers with a soft smile before looking at the clerk. Frederick, please guide them to their rooms so they can freshen up and then to the dining room. That's a fabulous idea, my lady. I will see you all shortly. Lilith clapped her hands and then began to walk toward the door with long, determined strides. Sebastian quickly sprinted after Lilith out of the room. A man stepped out of the shadows in a corner and followed after Lilith and Serena. He was a tall, bulky man with an emotional, hard and cold face. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. And Damien instantly recognized the royal gamma, Jonathan. They frowned as they watched him leave after Lilith like he was her guard, making them wonder who that woman really was. An hour later, the group was eating breakfast at a long table. Lilith, Sebastian, and the royal gamma joined them not long after they started. All through breakfast, Lilith was standing by the window and gazing outside, looking calm but thoughtful. Serena couldn't take her eyes off of Lilith. She was mesmerizing. She was the epitome of beauty and elegance. She had gotten rid of her cloak and now was wearing a black dress with an open neckline and a skirt that would shimmer ray in the light when moving. With one look, you could easily feel the great power she possessed. She was confident and strong-minded, and Serena couldn't help but feel a great respect and a bit of fear toward the woman. "Are you finally going to talk?" asked Ajax impatiently. He had barely touched his breakfast, feeling more anxious to think about food. Serena wasn't better than him. She had only managed to force down a few bites and had mostly played with the food on her plate. Lilith turned away from the window and looked at him. She walked toward the empty seat at the head of the table and sat down, crossing her legs gracefully. "It all started 600 years ago," started Lilith while she waved her hand. Everyone watched in amazement as a cup and saucer rose from the table, and so did the pot of tea. The pot was tipped with an invisible force and tea poured down into the cup that then flew toward Lilith's unlading hand. She raised the cup to her lip, ignoring all the wide eyes that were staring at her, and sipped the hot beverage while staring thoughtfully into space. There were two sisters, living in a coven of witches, Lilith continued, two sisters so opposite in behavior and personality. One had a heart as dark as night, and the other was pure like the light of stars. Both so powerful and respected among their kind. Their names were Melina and Serena. "Serena?" asked Arena, confused and surprised. She felt Ajax going stiff beside her when he heard the name. Lilith took a sip of her tea and nodded. "Yes, my dear," she answered, and her sharp eyes landed on Serena. The two sisters would argue about almost everything. It was because of their different natures. Melina was only after power, thriving on bringing everyone down to their knees in front of her, while Serena only wanted to restore balance and heal the wounded bodies and souls. So it was not out of mind to find the sisters in fights most of the time, for Serena would do everything to stop her sister and the damage she was causing. After some years, Melina killed the head of the coven and took her place, and with the aid of her followers, eliminated anyone who dared to object. She didn't even show mercy to her sister. So Serena ran away from the coven wounded and on the verge of dying, and hid in the woods that belonged to a pack. Melina didn't go after her, assuming that her sister would die at the hands of the werewolf. Serena had run into their territory, because it belonged to one of the most vicious and cold-hearted alphas known to everyone. But fate had other plans for Serena. A small smile appeared on Lilith's lips as she continued. It was Alpha himself who found the battered and almost dead woman in the woods surrounding his territory. It stirred, but the roar his wolf let out at the sight of Serena was so loud and powerful that it shook the ground for miles and disturbed the birds and animals, convincing Melina that Serena was dead. But in reality, Alpha's roar was from anger and pain, for he had finally found his mate. Serena was his mate, asked Grayson. "Yes," answered Lilith. "What was the name of the Alpha?" questioned Damien eagerly, and anyone who knew him knew in his mind he was reviewing every history book he had read. "Alpha Branded of Ironclaw Pack," responded Lilith. "But you might not find his name in so many books," baited Damien, "for the pack was turned to dust and out of most stories not long after. But I have heard about the pack," spoke Elric, frowning. "It was a pack up in north, right? You can still find their territories on very old maps that we have kept in our archives." "Yes, you are right, King Elric," nodded Lilith. "Vampires are a great race who cares about history and knowledge. You can find so many forgotten stories and information in their libraries. Alric nodded his head in appreciation. What happened then? Asked Ajax, unconsciously grabbing Serena's hand under the table to calm down his wrath. Some years passed and Melina was ruling over the coven with an iron fist. Spoke Lilith. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfading patience, enthusiasm. Despite everything she would do, all of her plans to conquer the outside world would go to waste. It was like everyone was always a step ahead of her. Besides, the mages and witches of the coven had started to protest and the voices were increasing day by day, challenging her. It was one of those days when she had the prophecy. Her followers one day caught one of the rebel witches and brought her to Melina. Melina tortured the woman to death, trying to get information about other rebels. But the woman didn't budge. She only opened her mouth when she was taking her last breath, and what she said wasn't what Melina wanted to hear ever. Lilith locked eyes with Serena, and her eyes shone with an emotion akin to hope. The woman made a prophecy. Lilith continued, not taking her eyes off Serena. She said that a woman from Serena's bloodline will bring an end to Melina and her cruel ruin, and will free everyone from the heavy shadow of Melina. Shit. Ajax cursed under his breath and tightened his hold around Serena's hand. Everyone somehow knew the prophecy related to their Serena, and all eyes snapped toward her who was looking wide-eyed at Lilith. Grayson turned to Lilith sharply. You don't mean that Luna Serena is related to that Serena? Right. He asked in disbelief. Lilith didn't answer his question. She continued her story. That prophecy made Melina doubt about Serena's death. She spoke. She dug deep and found out that her sister was alive and quite healthy, living with her mate, the Alpha of Iron Claw, and had two pups. So she realized why all of her plans were going downhill. Her sister was helping every pack, coven, and village outside to stand against her. Her anger was so much that she didn't waste any time attacking Iron Claw. But Serena and her mate had lots of time to prepare for this war beforehand, for Serena was sure that day would come eventually. Who won? Asked Freya curiously, who was silent till that point. Lilith smiled at her and looked between her and Alric for a second, before slightly nodding as if in approval. She then continued. Oh, of course. The Iron Claw. Fair Lady Freya. She answered and smiled wider at the blushing woman. They were a big pack with a large number of fierce warriors. It was a very drastic and great war. Both sides had dead warriors and casualties. But Melina had one more problem. The rebels from inside, stated Alric. Lilith nodded. Yes, her opponents from among her own people. So after a few days, she was also attacked by the witches and magicians from her own coven. So the Iron Claw easily overpowered her and her warriors. Lilith then looked outside of the window again. Her face was somber and emotional as so. Did they end her? Asked Damien, urging Lilith to talk. Alas, no. Lilith turned and looked at him, for they underestimated her. A mistake that caused so many people grief over centuries. She heaved a sigh and closed her eyes before continuing as if telling was paining her. When they finally caught her and bound her, they brought her before Serena and Alpha Brandon. She shook her head and her hands fisted into tight balls. They were a bunch of idiots. She seethed through gritted teeth. They should have beheaded that snake right away, but instead, they gave her a few minutes to talk, and that was enough for Melina to plan her escape. Serena had anticipated how much her sister had mastered the performing of magic. She hadn't anticipated how much more powerful Melina become or how much her soul had darkened. Everyone held their breaths, waiting for the last part of the story. A part that they knew was the reason for the misery that they all were going through. Melina performed an ancient spell, one so old and dark that only a few remembered it. Spoke Lilith. Her face was emotional as it was a spell that made the body wither away in seconds, but for the soul to survive. Before her sister Serena could do anything, she killed her body, but her soul survived and became a shadow. And in the last seconds, she opened her mouth and cursed Serena and her bloodline. A curse so powerful because it was cast by Melina, who was one of the 3 strongest witches Aya has ever seen. She cursed Serena and her bloodline to always remain miserable and die from a hard life. She cursed them so everyone became their enemy and they can't find solace even with their mates. Lilith's eyes were fixed on Serena as she talked about the curse. Serena's ears were ringing and her heart was pounding so hard. Her whole body was paralyzed and she felt her throat was closing up. The sound of a glass breaking brought everyone aside to a fuming Ajax. He had broken the glass of water he had and his whole body was shaking badly. His eyes were silver and his canines were protruding from his gums. But Serena and Lilith stayed locked. One full of surprise and disbelief and the other full of sympathy and sadness. A warning growl left Ajax's mouth and he jumped to his feet, making its scrape on the floor. But Serena spoke before he could do anything else. Am I? She trailed off and gulped before continuing, her face paling more and more with every passing second. Am I from which Serena's bloodline? For years nothing happened. Lilith continued her story without answering Serena. The Ironcloth arrived and everyone forgot about Melina and her curse. But 6 years after the war, the Alpha and Luna's son became sick. Such a disease that even Serena couldn't heal it. It slowly spread among others. The pack members turned against their leaders, blaming them for the death of their loved ones. The Alpha took out the sickness and it made everything even worse. One night the people of the pack attacked the Alpha family and killed Alpha Brandon, Luna Serena, and their son. Gasps and growls of anger filled the air. But Lilith didn't take her eyes off of a shocked Serena, who had a hand over her mouth. Though in the last moment, Luna Serena was able to help her daughter escape from the pack with a few loyal pack members. Lilith went, a few weeks later, when the Ironclaw was at its weakest point. The Rouges attacked them and killed everyone in the pack. So the Ironclaw was destroyed forever and was slowly forgotten. James sprung to his feet and began to pace the room while tugging hard at his hair. Between them, he was the only one who had lost a pack once and the story had triggered the bad memories in him again. But Serena was too shocked to go to her friend's help. Her body was numb and she couldn't believe what she was hearing. It was all because of a curse. What happened to the daughter? Asked Talric, his face and voice somber. She faced so many misfortune until she found her mate. Lilith sighed and pinched the bridge of her nose. It was as if telling the story had drained her energy too. She gave birth to her own pups, but it didn't take long for misfortune to come knocking at her door again. Years passed and Serena's bloodline suffered from time to time. But they lasted. They mated and found their families and spread through Aetheria. Some of them are living in peace. But the curse came harder upon the line of them that were gifted. The ones who somehow still had the power of Serena in their veins, and they were all women. Their power was not like Serena, of course, for they were not full-blooded witches. But still, they were gifted with rare healing powers. Such a power that could heal the hardest disease and worst wounds ever. Somehow one in the line found their way to a pack in the south and settled there, when she found her mate who was the beta of the pack, deeming the pack the safest place to stay. The name of the pack was Crimson Crescent. Damien and Grayson jumped to their feet, panting hard. They could guess the rest. So it was true. Their Luna was truly their relative and from the beta bloodline. This is a joke, growled Grayson, his eyes changing color between hazel and dark gray. This is only a sick fucking joke. Lilith just stared at Serena with soft eyes, unfazed by the uproar that her story had caused. She leaned forward and leaned her arms on the table. You, my dear Serena, are from that cursed bloodline. She spoke with a soft and sad voice. That curse is the reason why you and your family suffered so much. That curse is why your pack turned against you or why your mate rejected you. The answer you were seeking is this. All because of a curse. If that is why, Serena began to speak, making all eyes turn to her at hearing her raspy emotionless voice. What changed? How things have gotten better? Or all of these good things are going to be taken away from me in a few years? No, Serena. It was Sebastian who spoke this time with excitement shining in his eyes. That is where the story reaches its turning point. This is the time that things become better. What the fuck do you mean? Growled Ajax, barely controlling his rage to not destroy the room fully. Speak clear. The curse is lifted, spoke Seb with excitement and glanced at Lilith briefly. Lady Lilith lifted the curse for you. It's not lifted fully. Don't go ahead of yourself, Seb. Lilith waved her hand nonchalantly. It can't be lifted fully as long as Melina is alive. That bitch is still alive. Enthusiasm, Ajax growled and slammed his palm on the table, making everyone except Lilith, Elric, and the Royal Gamma flinch. The mysterious Royal Gamma had sat in a corner of a room, seemingly bored out of his mind, and had not uttered a word to anyone. I told you. She never died in the first place. Have you been listening, or wasting your time growling and grunting? Scolded Lilith in a bored, unbothered tone. My lady, I think you should explain more about her. Spoke Elric and clenched his fists. His anger rose as he went on. She is the one who is behind everything that has happened to us. She is the reason why so many of my people are dead or captured and turned into beasts. Freya absently reached out her hand and placed it on top of his fist on the table. My king, calm down, she whispered gently for only Elric to hear. His body immediately relaxed and his eyes that had turned red once again turned grey. He glanced at Freya, who gave him a weak, encouraging smile. She went to take her hand away, blushing slightly, but he quickly latched onto it and kept their hands locked. A small action that didn't go unnoticed by Dorian and Lilith's sharp gaze. As I said, Mel in his soul survived and fled to the realm of shadows, spoke Lilith. She became weak, too weak, and for many years struggled with the creatures of Shadowland. No one knows how, but somehow after so many years, she was able to find a physical body for herself. She returned and returned with even more power, for she has the power of shadows too. And now she wants what she couldn't have in the first place. Asked Elric, still holding Freya's hand for dear life. Yes, now she wants everyone at her feet, answered Lilith coldly as if the idea alone was bothering her. She wants to become the queen of Aetheria, the soul ruler. She started to gain strength and followers over the years, and now she has an army of every criminal and bad soul in Aetheria. You can add the creatures she had enchanted using her magic like vampires. Now she is ready to attack, and her main goal is to kill Serena and end her bloodline. Ajax roared and swept everything within his reach from the top of the table. His eyes were blazing like two wells of melted silver. I will fucking kill whoever dares to come near my mate. His voice deep and guttural. He was on the verge of shifting. His wolf was going insane, so was he. The story sounded so unbelievable and at the same time was like pieces of a puzzle that were falling into place one by one, filling the gaps in their minds. His soft hands grabbed a whole hold of each of his arms and he looked down, seeing his mate clutching his arms tightly. To my agent extraordinaire, Mylan Noban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Please calm down, she said as tears streamed down her beautiful face. I still need to know more. Please, we must know more. Ajax quickly buried his face in her neck and took deep breaths in her sweet scent. He could feel how disrupted and sad she was, and it was tearing him apart that he was unable to make her feel better. She gently pulled away and turned toward Lilith, who was looking at them with a soft look in her eyes. Why me? She asked desperately. In nothing special. My powers are nothing more than healing powers. I can feel it. I'm not special. Then, why me? You're right, my dear. Nodded Lilith in agreement. Though you are very unique and great in your own way, you have no such power that can in any form cause Melon as death. She can kill you with a flick of her wrist if she wants. Ajax let out a threatening growl, but Lilith ignored him and continued. But that is another mistake that Melina had made. What do you mean? James asked and frowned. Melina simply misinterpreted the meaning behind the prophecy, explained Lilith. It was her actions that have brought her to the verge of a fall. For long she was thinking that someone powerful from the bloodline of Serena would raise and kill her with their powers. But she was wrong. Her own thirst to kill Serena and stop the prophecy made her make reckless decisions. She made a distraction for herself from Serena that gave others the means and power to prepare to bring her down. Speak clearer, growled Ajax. pulling Serena's back flush to his front. They heard a low warning growl and saw the royal Gamma leaning in his seat and baring his teeth for Ajax. His eyes were shining like pure gold, full of irritation and anger. It made everyone frown at him, confused about why he seemed angry because Ajax snapped at Lilith. "John, calm down please," said Serena softly. "Remember what I asked you earlier." The Gamma leaned back, crossing his arms, and half irritated, saying something along the lines of how his alpha would be angry if he heard them. Lilith turned back to the others and sighed before looking back at Ajax. "Serena cannot kill Melina even if she tries for ages." She elaborated more. "The night you rejected your mate, Melina felt and thought that Serena died because Serena lost her connection to her wolf. But when she found out about her being alive after the attack on your pack, she made some reckless decisions out of fear. And that pushed her further to her doom. She wanted to gain more power before challenging Serena, but her plans failed miserably." "But I don't understand," cried Serena desperately. "If she had not hurt me, I wouldn't even be here to know about her. Even right now, as you also mentioned, I don't have the power to challenge her. Then why she wants to kill me? That's the thing." "Serena," Lilith answered, "Melina thinks you have a special and hidden power inside of you, strong enough to challenge her and take revenge for yourself and your ancestors. But in the end, it's her fear and actions that are causing her failure. You're only a catalyst here." She then smiled. "Let's not forget that you did a great thing to stop her plans. She was so proud of her poison. She didn't tell me about its ingredients, and even I was unable to find the antidote. But yours did work in through, and her plans to weaken every pack and coven with it." Serena closed her eyes and leaned her head back on Ajax's chest. Everything was so overwhelming. A raging headache was pounding in her head, and she was feeling dizzy with all of the information she had gathered. She couldn't believe what Lilith was talking about. She was no one special, only a healer from a pack. Yes, she had recently become a Luna too, but that didn't mean she could defeat one of the most powerful witches of all time. Besides, she hated war. All she wanted was peace. She wanted to help her pack to thrive. She wanted to help people have embody and prosperity all over Aethia if she could. War, taking revenge, or killing someone was so out of mind for her. Ajax was not any better than her. His wolf was not coming down even with their mate in their arms. He wanted to shift and single-handedly kill that bitch, Melina, for everything she had made them go through. Not only Serena, but everyone in his pack. He wanted to take revenge on Melina for ruining Serena and her family as lives, for turning his parents into beasts in his mind, and for making his pack members and himself abusive assholes. There was no way in hell he could calm down until Melina was dead, this time for good. "But how do you know everything?" asked Damien. He narrowed his eyes at Lilith. "You talk as if you know this Melina personally. You should be a powerful witch to be able to lift the curse of our Luna." Lilith smirked. "Always the rational one, aren't you?" baited Damien. Her eyes glinted as she stared into Damien's eyes. "Interesting. If we win, you will find out that you have not come this far from your home in vain. Just answer his fucking question." "Enthusiasm," Ajax growled, frustrated. Serena didn't miss how Sebastian suddenly paled and began to look at Lilith with a glint of fear in his eyes. But Lilith herself looked so relaxed and unbothered by the question. She rose elegantly, holding her head high like a true queen, and stood tall at the head of the table. "I told you that Melina and the first Serena were two of the three most powerful witches in Aetheria." She spoke firmly and her eyes shone red briefly as her smirk grew wider. "I'm Lilith, daughter of Melina the witch and the powerful witch known in Aetheria.